Okay, so the next thing we need to do before we start the build in earnest is to actually think about how we want to present this. Do we want to present it as a street as intended in one long road? And if so, how is that going to look? We could put the tank there with the gun facing forward and then the crew in a row there, and we've probably got the right length to be able to do that, and then we've got a little bit of space there for some tools dotted around and the other two figures that are sort of at rest poses. So if that's doable, that would work. We could potentially put the tank in the corner and lose the fence or show the fence damaged and have the turret at an angle, but that's going to leave us a lot of space, and we therefore have to think about something else going on the diorama, and I personally think that would look a little bit crammed. So if we're going to do a street, then I think that's my preferred option. We could also put the tank at the wide end of the street like that, which allows us to put a bit of an angle on it and have the turret at a bit of an angle for them and have the crew facing that way. So we've got two options if we do the street that way. So that's worth thinking about. If we decide to join the streets up like so that we've got one central road, that gives us some different options. We can have the tank at the forefront of the diorama, but then you're not really going to see the figures. Or we can have the tiger at the back of the diorama. It's the front as it faces you, but the back as it faces me, which would allow us then to have the tiger at an angle and the turret out, but it doesn't look too natural, is my honest thought, because you've not got the length to have the crew cleaning the barrel. You're going to have the turret side on, which means you're going to have the tank side on. Why would the tank be side on in the street? That makes no sense. So although we've got more space around it, I don't think that's probably the way that it's going to work. So I'm thinking that we need to go back to this layout. Now, when you're planning a diorama, you need to think about how the eye reads. And in the West, most of us read a book from the top left of the page to the bottom right of the page, and that is therefore how we also look at a diorama. So if this is the back of the diorama, we would start here at this back end, start here, and our eye would travel in that direction. From there to that corner is how our eye is going to see it. And anything we put in the middle is going to change the direction of our eye. So if I put the tank there, what's going to happen is we're going to look across, we're going to see the tank first, and then our eye is going to be drawn along the tank and along the figures, and we're not really going to register the building. If we stood there and studied it, we would then go to the building and again go across and then start looking around. But when you initially see it, you're going to see the tank at the forefront and follow that, which means you're going to miss the back of the diorama. If we put the tank here, then our perspective changes. The building being so tall, is going to be the major thing, and it's at the top left. So our eye will be immediately drawn to the building, then to the fence, then to the figures in the foreground. We'll follow the figures along, and then we'd come to the tank. and the tank would be the finale of the view of that diorama, and the building behind the tank would just be framing it, and that's the shorter building. It will very much be disappearing a little bit in the background, but I don't mind that. So I think if we have the tank at the wide end and then the figures and the barrel and the figures along the narrow end, I think that naturally is going to work for the layout of the diorama and the angle of the street, and also how our eye is going to see that diorama. So we're going to follow the crew into their tank. So that's my sort of thought process at the moment. So I think in terms of layout, I now have a plan. Now I've got a plan, I need a story. So the story is important because that story is what is going to start the building blocks of what your diorama looks like. If you don't have a story, what you'll end up doing is putting individual elements in, and you might find it doesn't work. So if we didn't do a story and we go, right, well, we want to put this tank on here, we could end up with a tank, figures that don't quite match the tank. We might have end up with a motorcycle that's from a different period. We might have civilian figures that aren't representing what's happening in the diorama, as in they're walking down the street, or they're looking horrified, or they're injured, and you've got a tank being maintained, so that doesn't key in. So you need to have a story to key it in. Now, because we're doing a model of an actual tank that actually existed and actually has a backstory, I also have to consider that. And we know that this tank was delivered to the Leningrad front in September, and we know it was captured in the January. And we know by the time it was captured, one of the turret bins on the sides had been removed, but we know that it was there initially. We can still see a mounting bracket for it. So somewhere in that period of time, it got some damage. So we can use those as building blocks for the story. So if we do it at the back end, just before she's captured, we're going to have winter camouflage on the tank, and we're going to need snow. If we do it September, then we could do it before she's camouflaged and do her just in the grey. And September's that bit warmer around Leningrad, and that would justify my figures being in shirts and sleeves rolled up, although they're working very hard and so probably feeling quite warm. So that gives me a start of a story, and then we have to consider how I want to present it. So I would like to have it in winter camouflage. I would like to show one bin and one damaged bin to say, right, okay, the bin got damaged, and then at some point they removed the bin because it had been damaged. And maybe this is the point where they would have removed that bin, possibly. So we don't want to do it as delivered, and we don't want to do it right before it is captured, so we want to do it somewhere in between. So in my mind, we're going to do it after first action. The bin has managed to get damaged one way or another. We are at the back end of September. It's cold. There has been some snow, which is warranted putting the winter camouflage on, but we're also getting not full on winter, so we can have snow and we can have that thawing out and not have everything covered in snow. So that sort of ties in my figures to my tank to the scenery. We're outside Leningrad, so we've got Eastern European style buildings, so that works. We want to put a bit of snow down, but we don't want to cover it in snow, so that period of time works. Means we can mess around with things like varnishes and water, and maybe have water in the gutters and melting snow on the roofs, and bits of snow against the fence. So that's just going to add another dimension to the diorama, and we can then have the figures not in their winter camouflage, working away at a tank that is in winter camouflage, and we sort of tie it all together. So there we go. We are going to change the diorama process from December to some point in September after she's had at least one engagement. That's the plan. So a couple of new things for me to try in this build series. I've got some live colour paint here for German tanks. Now I use live colours a lot in my shipbuilding. I really like them. They have a satin finish which works really well on ships, and they're sort of like Tamiya paints that you can use more easily. They're great for brushing as well as for spraying, so I really like these paints, but I've never used them outside of ships, so this is a bit of a first for me. I'm going to give them a go, see how I get on with them in terms of armoured fighting vehicles and that sort of thing. I'm sort of looking for a new or an additional paint system at the moment, so I use primarily Humbrol and Vallejo paints at the moment, and then I've got a scattering of other brands, but I would really like to have 1/3 solid brand there that I could fall back on. So as I've got quite a bit of life colour for ships, I'm hoping that these will come good, and then life colour will be my third brand, and then that'll be it. I'll just use those three brands exclusively. Anyway, we're going to give those a try, so that's new for this build series. And I'm also going to try this Tamiya Diorama texture paint, Snow Effects. Never used this before. I want to have some sort of melted snow around, and when I say melted, I mean some snow that's melting, some snow that's perhaps a bit slushy and dirty. I don't really know yet, but I thought I'd give this a go. Comes in a plastic pot. What have we got here? 100 millilitres. It wasn't too expensive compared to some other brands out there. There's AK and people like that doing all sorts of snow stuff. So thought we'd give it a go. It's grainy in texture, and apparently you can move it around and pile it up and stuff. So be interesting to see how we get on with that. And when I read this, I'll read you what it says. It says a water-based paint features a paste-like texture of 0.05 millimeter to 0.35 millimeter white marble pebbles to simulate snow. After applying a thick layer, the surface can be formed before it dries completely. Contains enough paint to cover a B4 size area at one time. So for having little bits of snow dotted around, this will probably be ideal. Okay, so let's get the plan done for the tank so we know what we're doing. Now, right at the start of the Rye Field instructions, we are being shown two options. They're not numbering it or anything, so they're not going to reference this during the in build instructions. But what it's basically giving you is an option pre-capture and as captured. So the differences are we have one bin missing, but the brackets still on, which is how she's seen in the photographs of her after being caught by the Soviet Union. And the key differences, other than the bracket missing, is you've got the tools missing off the deck, and we've got this front wheel in place. In the pre-captured version, you've got both bins on. You've got the extenders on the exhaust there, and you've got this front wheel missing. And that's essentially the differences. Oh, and you've got the tools on. Now, I want to do some form of hybrid where we're between these two, and that we have the bin damaged but not removed. Because we've got photo etch bins that we can use, I think that's great. Now, I'm going to be showing the tank at a service point. So the brass gun cleaning rods will actually be left in one rod, and I'm hoping that that will connect the three figures together that Gavin's doing for us. And we've got one or two other lovelies here. So I want to actually show really this version, but with a damaged bin. So it's that bin there that's damaged. So that's sort of the plan. It allows me to have all the tools on and do everything, but also show there's a bit of action. Now, when it comes to the camouflage, I've got two ways I can go here. I could do fully winter camouflage, no winter camouflage, or I suppose I could even do it being painted with camouflage. There are figures out there for painting, and we could show it part done, maybe, which might be nice. So something to think about, but I'm probably going to go with the full winter camouflage, I'd imagine. That then leaves me a question on what I want to do with the wheels. Do I want to have the additional wheel put on, which clearly happens by the time she gets captured? When I look at some of the photographs of her in the snow, she's got it on. So it's likely that we'll do full wheels as well. So we'll put the wheel on. Probably, I might change my mind yet, but that's the plan. Now, we also have additional instructions to incorporate because we've got this update set. And what they've done in the instructions, which is really nice, because obviously they're the manufacturer of the kit as well as the update set, the instructions reference the step number and page number in the main kit instructions as to where this is. So what I'm going to do now is just go and mark up my instructions as to when I need to be referencing these instructions, and that'll make life a lot easier. And we've also going to swap out the tank tracks as well, so we'll mark that up at the same time.